members to confirm accuracy of their records in the WIS database in a month's time frame when contacted by email. After another month of unresponsive response, the record will be marked invalid. AFNIC may publish publicly a report about number resources with invalid POC. 1 year after the first contact information, contact initiation, sorry, I'll take that again. 1 year after the first contact initiation, if the data is still not accurate, the organization has failed to respond to the call to resolve the data inconsistency. AFNIC may claim the number resources back. So these are scenarios where some of these processes were followed in other regions. This is the situation within other regions, and for ARIN, they conduct an annual POC validation process. For APNIC, there was a similar policy proposed that did not reach consensus and was withdrawn by the author. For RIPE NCC, the URL there, perhaps we'll give more information about that. For LACNIC, LACNIC obligates the resources, the resource holders contractually through their RSA and review WIS database when resources are requested and updated accordingly. So these are some of the comments we received during the on the mailing list. These are some of the comments we received on the draft, on the first draft of the proposal. So some posters indicate certain words used in the proposal needs to change. Words like may to be changed to shall, etc. There was also words like requests like using the word must, and so on and so forth. So there were suggestions of introducing a grace period, and different texts were suggested. The author acknowledged to integrate comments in the draft accordingly. So these are the discussion points. Has there been experience of invalid WIS record? Is there a problem this policy addresses? If there is a problem, should it be addressed through a policy or through occasional WIS cleanup by staff? Would this proposal help? Would this proposal lead to possible abuse, especially, so these are one of the questions. If this proposal is generally on the right track, should the timing phases and or penalties to defaulters be changed? These are just discussion points, and it's not limited to this. On this basis, I'm gonna put the floor open for comments. Thank you.
Hi, Andrew Alston, Liquid Telecoms. I'm finding it a little bit difficult to debate this policy because, as you stated on the mailing list, there is a fairly serious rewrite of this policy. As per Tuesday, May 20th, sent out at 2:56 p.m. to be exact. And the wording has changed sufficiently in that policy to make it very difficult to debate the old policy when the author has said very specifically in their mail that he attached a version that would be put in the right format as per the PDP requirement. Now, I acknowledge that it wasn't put into the right format as per the PDP requirement and submitted, else it would be up here, but it still creates a bit of a problem because if I look at the version that's on the mailing list, I know, I did a lot of the edits in it. I would support the thing, but as it currently stands, it's very difficult to support. What I'd like to ask the PDP co-chairs to do, if at all possible, is can we get that mail with the updated version up on the screen, because that will give us a true indication of where this policy sits so that the community can be informed as to what the author actually said he would do following the revisions.
All right, thank you very much, Andrew. So if I get you correctly, you're referring to the edits that you suggested to be made, right? The edits that you made, and you're asking whether that could be put up here instead. So, yes, of course. Of course, you would agree that we will not take that as a new draft until the author himself has provided an updated version. So, I think it was yesterday, there was a version that was sent to the PDWG list. However, by policy, we are not allowed to present such updated drafts a week before the face-to-face meeting. And because we just received it yesterday, and that is why that update is not here on the agenda. So I hope that is clear. However, I don't know, because I know that he hasn't sent the updated copy to the mailing list. However, I don't know whether the community wants us to now be discussing a draft that has not been published, a new draft that has not been published. Thank you. Douglas, please go ahead.
I don't know if we should continue the discussion in light of this new information, discussing the old draft or wait for the new draft. I think there is premise for discussing the new draft in the AOB. It won't be a formal policy, but can be discussed in any other business section. Now, if why I came here was to raise an issue, I think, that exists with the current draft. I think that looking at the end, with the end in mind, the proposal is going to eventually lead to a member losing their address space if they do not comply. Now, this is going to be a legal matter that has to be covered. It can be here, but if it's not in the RSA, the one document that is signed between the member and Afrinic, it's definitely going to have be some legal implications for Afrinic. So I would be a bit uncomfortable to have it only in the policy if it were not referenced explicitly in one way or the other in the RSA.
Thank you very much, Douglas. Alan, please, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Alan Barrett again. I agree with Douglas. There's not really much point in having an extended discussion here since there is a new draft out on the mailing list, which is not in front of us. So I think it's probably best to just cut this discussion short. Although there's one point I'd like to make, and that is last time around, there was an initiative that the staff were busy trying to verify the WHOIS data. Perhaps we could get an update from Ernest on what happened there, and also about the legal requirement. It's my understanding that the RSA, the legal agreement between the entities and Afrinic already has a requirement that they must keep their WHOIS information up to date. So failure to do that, I believe, would be a breach. And I think, obviously not being a lawyer, but I would guess that that kind of breach would leave Afrinic the ability to reclaim the resources.
Yes, Alan, you're right. When this proposal first came up, that was in Lusaka, we came up to the microphone and said, hey, look, actually there's already an internal activity that is ongoing. We are trying to reach out to our members in an effort to keep their WHOIS contact information and other information up to date. Therefore, the proposal might not be needed after all. And in light of that, the author withdrew it. However, along the road, it turned out that the response that was expected out of this activity was not what actually the response was not that good. We published a report. It's on our website. It has the information, the numbers, how we started, the progress, the percentages of members that actually got back and got their information updated, and the numbers that did not actually respond to our call. So in light of that, we thought that if this cannot, if we ourselves as the Secretariat cannot enforce or cannot force members to update their contact information, let's reach out again to the community and to the original author to bring up this proposal again. So through policy, perhaps members can be compelled to have this contact information of theirs kept up to date. Yes, on the part of what the RSA says, you are right, the RSA has a clause on that, and I think this issue was also discussed at the time the proposal was originally presented. The RSA requires that contact information must be kept up to date all the time. And yes, if members are in breach of the RSA, I believe that wouldn't want to speak from a legal perspective there. Yeah, we have our legal counsel for that, but yes, I believe there would be sufficient ground to take action once there is a breach of some sort of contract. So without commenting further on that, perhaps if our legal person is here, I would defer to them to provide more comment.
Yeah, is Ashok around? Is Ashok in the room? Okay.
Yes, our legal advisor is not here at the moment. Perhaps you guys can post a question to him on the list. He's subscribed on all our lists and he can always provide feedback. Andrew.
Just a comment, and while I state very clearly that I am no lawyer, I've actually got the RSA open in front of me. And as far as I can see, there are two clauses that are fairly relevant here. First of all, Section 2, point G says, provide and ensure accurate contact information are stored in Afrinic databases, WHOIS and MyAfrinic. So that's on Section 2. Then under Section 4, under conditions of service, there is, with regards to potential legal consequences, Section 4 states the applicant hereby irrevocably, and then you skip to point 2 there, commits itself to using the services in full and unreserved compliance with Afrinic's policies and mandates. And I would presume that those include the policies set by the PDWG. It also states that failure by the applicant to comply with a request made as above may entail revocation or withholding of the service supplied by Afrinic. So in my mind, the RSA is pretty clear on this topic.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Douglas, please.
Now we have these provisions in the RSA. My question perhaps to staff is, you've tried to do this under the framework of the RSA and as a staff initiative. Is it working? Is it not working? Is there any reason you feel it will work any better under the PDWG? If the RSA can't compel our members to actually keep this information up to date, is this policy going to help, and how is that going to be? Should we figure something out, or the policy is the right way to go about this? Thank you.
Yes, that was the original idea behind the staff coming back to the community and to the original author that, look, our initial efforts at doing this and reaching out to the members actually did not yield the results we expected. Therefore, we do hope that through policy, if it's enforceable through policy, then we hope that it will yield perhaps better results and better feedback. Does that answer your question, Douglas?
Okay, okay, Douglas.
Sorry, no, it does not answer clearly the right question I'm saying. The question I'm saying is, yes, you're saying it is enforceable through policy, but guess what? It's also enforceable through the RSA. So what I'm trying to drive as is what is different, what is going to be different about the PD, the policy development process that is not catered for under the RSA, because anyway, in the end, the way you are going to enforce this PDWG policy is through the RSA.
Okay, the discussion is getting quite legal and getting a little uncomfortable, but I think the RSA, if one was in breach of a contract, then I believe that once there's a breach, then the contract could be revoked. And in my mind, that would be a very harsh action to take, because the RSA does not explicitly state other measures to take if a member has breached that part of the RSA. I think Andrew read it out. It's black and white. So members are expected to keep their contact information up to date, and when that's not done, then that could be taken as a breach. And revoking of that agreement means actually revoking membership and the resources that the member holds. And I believe with that ambiguity, that was one of the reasons why this came back to the community, to see maybe policy could define, I would say, a more civil way of getting this done, of getting members to keep their contact information up to date in their WIS database. Yeah.
Just a note, it's Andrew here again. The RSA actually has two options in there, from what I read out there. It says AFRINIC has the option to revoke, or AFRINIC has the option to suspend. So there is another option in the RSA. Though personally I would be very uncomfortable with having policies put forward by the PDWG that conflicted potentially with the RSA. So the two do need to be aligned with each other. Otherwise, I would definitely stand against the policy myself, and that's on a personal note.
Yeah, because at the same time, the same RSA talks of being, compliance with policies that have been developed through the community's policy development process. So, yes, you're quite right, Andrew, about making sure that the two processes, the policy development process, what comes out of there, and the RSA are actually quite aligned so that they're not in conflict.
All right.
Okay, Chris here.
Chris, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'm just wondering, one of the things that we've been talking around is, how we're going to implement this and that. But my question is, do we have a process in place that actually, that we audit our membership from time to time? Or, is that not possible? Or is it in there? I don't know. Auditing our membership from time to time. We allocate resources, right? And if we have doubts, or just as a general usage, because I think when you do your application, there's a series of stuff that you need to comply with. What stops us from actually, perhaps at some point in time, go back and say, well, okay, let's see whether things are right. I know we're not the police, but
yes, Chris, there is a process, and this is the process that led to the activity that we talked about earlier, and this is the same activity that has not yielded the success we had hoped for.
Okay, so,
Yes.
So my next question is it being enforced?
It is not, well, because if we were to enforce it, again, Chris, if we were to enforce it, then there would be a harsh measure as far as enforcement is concerned, because that means these hundreds of members that were in breach actually of the RSA would have to have their resources revoked or their membership suspended until they're actually in compliance. So this is the situation. Yeah.
Okay, Douglas.
Thank you very much for the clarity we've gotten about the RSA versus our policy. I think now it's getting apparent that there is sufficient provisions within the RSA to actually take care of this issue. So back to the question, do we need the policy? My view on it, probably not. because it's going to create another copy, probably duplicate, probably identical, most probably not identical. But at one point or the other, we are going to run into a situation where we have the two not saying the same thing. It might be a small may or shall, and then we'll go up, we'll go over it for yes, where a member comes and sues a phrenic for revoking their, and we don't want that to happen. I think there's enough legal provisions within the RSA, and I believe we should not have this policy in place. Our phrenic staff should just continue doing the cleanup that they're doing and reach out to the RSA for any legal support they need in enforcing this. Thank you.
Thank you for that observation. Thank you. Yeah, Madhvi.
Just wanted to comment from a registration service perspective. Usually when we receive requests, we verify if we're getting the request from a registered contact. If that person is not a registered contact, we will request them for the update of the organization records before we will attend to the request. So when they really do need Afrinix assistance, then they will make it fast. They will be very proactive and request us, give us the information to update the records. But from what I've observed, ever since we started that project, is we have reached out to our 1,000+ members on a one-to-one basis, and most of them have not responded.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. Okay, if there are no more comments on this particular policy proposal, I would then suggest that we'll continue the discussion on the mailing list. Then we'll then move to the open mic session. If there are any comments, questions, issues, you want to say something? All right, so there's this one last item on the agenda before the open mic, which is the proposed PDP modification. Actually, this we could also say is also part of the open mic session because our time is fast spent. So the first one is the consensus, right? So there has been discussion within APNIC region about extending consensus base, which could be of interest to our community. Some of the questions that were being asked was that by what number of people in attendance represents the community in order to determine consensus. So this is also re-emphasizing some of the things that Alan has said earlier. So what do we need to start? So if 4 people are in the room, do we observe consensus based on those 4 people? How do we do this? Also, the other question is, can we also explore possibility of including remote participation to determining consensus? We're following the mailing list on APNIC. They are trying to also test that out in their next meeting, so that we want to see whether if that works well, maybe it could be very useful for us in our region, considering that people don't have enough resources to attend face-to-face meeting. The second one is the emergency clause on PDP. There is this particular section of the PDP which we are proposing to be introduced into PDP process to allow for handling of emergency proposals, emergency policy proposals, especially perhaps for policy proposals that requires urgent need, because we know that there are some certain requirements for proposals. It has to be discussed on the mailing list 4 weeks before. It has to be passed through some certain processes, etc., etc. So we're asking whether we can put this to allow for proposal that needs urgent attention, especially since some of these resources we have, they move out also urgently. So 3, co-chairs and policy. So the current PDP does not explicitly indicate whether a co-chair can propose a policy. So the question to the community is, should a co-chair be allowed by PDP to propose a policy? If we agree by that, then we can include that suggestion in the process. The 4th one is the timeline for ratifying proposal. This was already said in the earlier part of the session, where we are now proposing whether there are 3 options. So the 6 months implementation period should be extended from 6 months to 9 months or even 1 year, or a ratification deadline is set to enable staff implementation. That is, do we set it out of the 6 months, do we say board must ratify a policy proposal 2 months within the 6 months, so that will give enough time for staff to be sure that at least they have enough time to prepare and implement the policy. The 3rd option is the implementation period is set to commence after board ratification. So this is basically saying maintain the 6 months, but don't start counting from last call, end of last call. Start counting from board ratification. These are all. This is not limited to this. These are all just points that we just put up, and for your to improve on the discussion. So hang on. Is that it? Okay. So those are the 4 items which are up for discussion. I would like to ask that you kindly be as brief as possible, and I'll start with Andrew. Andrew, please go ahead.
Hi, Andrew here, Liquid. Okay, a couple of things. First of all, while I fully acknowledge that these are purely discussion points, I would ask that if time does come to modify the PDP, it is done through the proper process with a reference number. Secondly, can you move to the next slide, please? Okay, this clause, as put there, represents gross scope creep of the mandate of the Council of Elders, which is an issue that was raised when the Council of Elders was first formed. I quote from the bylaws, section 16.4, this council shall have an advisory role and shall provide help and assistance to the chair or the entire board. They are not a decision-making council. Their term as directors has run its course. And as such, the Council of Elders is not a decision-making council. It is purely advisory. Can we please avoid the scope creep?
Thank you, Andrew. Please go ahead, Alan.
Hi, Alan Barrett. So my question is, what is the status of this text that I see up there? Who is proposing these changes? And, is it part of the formal process, or is it just somebody's idea of some talking points for this meeting, for the open mic?
Yeah, thank you very much, Alan, for that very critical question. Just like I said before I started this discussion, it was just some text to allow us discuss some points during this open mic session. So this is not a proposal per se. Nobody is proposing anything. We, for instance, this particular one, this item 3 was just one thing that I felt we thought we should put across, because we want to make sure that if we are if a chair, for instance, is writing a policy, you want to make sure that it's actually according to the PDP. So it's not a proposal, it's just some text that we hope that could help us improve on the PDP policy process. Thank you.
I would like to address two issues. The first is that of whether or not a co-chair can author a policy, and no, a co-chair cannot author policy. The reason is simple. When it comes to drawing consensus, this person has a conflict of interest. They should not be allowed to author policies. The second is on the emergency policy process. We already have one. If you read Article 8 of the PD policy development process, there is a section called varying the process. So it's already taken care of. We do not need to reinvent the wheel on this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that comment, Douglas.
Sunday here. I totally agree with Douglas regarding the role of the PDP chair. In the days when we didn't have enough policies to discuss, those were creative things to do. Now we have enough policies, and I think the chair should not to recuse themselves so that there will be no conflict of interest. Regarding the second one about fast track, especially policies that threaten our processes and are a threat to our organization, refer to Article 11.4 of the Afrinic bylaw, which states, notwithstanding the provisions of Article 11.2, the board may adopt such policies regarding the management of internet number resources where it considers that the same is necessary and urgent, having regard to the proper and responsible usage of these resources. So we're already covered. If in case of emergency we need to pull a lever, we can pull the lever.
Okay, thank you, Sunday. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Paulos here again. I have maybe one or two issues. With respect to Council of Elders, I think that it is correct that the Council of Elders is advisory. And please don't pass a policy to force the board to consult it. It would break the bylaws. So the council is purely advisory, and the board is not required to seek the advice, but the advice can be offered. On the issue of a co-chair, yes, number 3, proposing a policy, I would like to note that this has happened in the past, and I think if you look at the NECAST policy, you will see that in that case, the co-chair was also the author or co-author of the policy. So it has happened in the past, and the process has been that when consensus is being determined, the co-chair has recused him or herself from the process. But judging from precedents, this has taken place in the past. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if the co-chairs have an itch to develop a policy. I don't think it can be bad. In developing the PDP, since I was involved, I think this is deliberately silent. It's not against and it's not for. So the practice has been that co-chairs have done this. My last point, the PDP is a policy, and argument has been done in the past whether you can edit a policy. I think that the general consensus is that if you don't like the PDP, you can't edit it. You should develop a new PDP. And it applies to every Afrinic policy. If you don't like the policy, you can't go in there and change a statement. You have to develop a new policy. Sorry, Paulos, can I get a clarification? You're saying that even all the policy proposals we have, it can't be updated. It has to be, a new one needs to be created, right? Is that what you're saying? Yes, if you don't read the PDP policy carefully, you can't edit a policy. When you want to change something in the policy, you need to develop a new policy that passes through the whole process of the PDP.
All right, thank you.
Okay, my name is Vitus from Ghana, and my comment or question is in relation to abuse contact information in the Afrinic region. There was a proposal for the creation of an object as the preferred place to publish abuse public contact information within the Afrinic region. Now the question is, how is this proposal doing or faring? Is the community buying into it? And what are the numbers in terms of volumes of people that are willingly submitting this information? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll quickly answer that. Yeah, this proposal, I think, it was ratified and implemented about 2 years ago. We did not expect that a question would come up about the statistics of that. If you really are serious about seeing the stats, then we can perhaps add this to our statistics section on our website. But yeah, remember it's a voluntary. The way that proposal was wrote and ratified and implemented, the necessity to put abuse contact information in resource data, who is resource data, is actually voluntary. It's not mandatory. That's the issue. That's the way it was written, and that's the way it was implemented and ratified.
Okay, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. Please go ahead.
Okay, just two quick things. It's Andrew here again from Liquid, but yeah. Firstly, I'd like to thank my friend Sunday for drawing our attention to clause 11.4. But I think 11.4 is incomplete without a reading of clause 11.5, which states any policy adopted by the board under the provisions of article 11.4 shall be submitted to the community for endorsement at the next public policy meeting. So let's be clear on this. Yes, the board can, under articles 11.4, ratify an emergency policy and implement it. However, that policy will not continue to exist after the next PDP unless endorsed and ratified by the community. And I think that needs to be made very clear.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
The second comment, with regards to what Paulo said about not being able to edit the PDP or policies, yes, technically you will get a new reference number, but there is nothing stopping a policy that says insert this word from policy X, delete word from policy Y, and hence editing through policy. You could alternatively simply take the current text, cut, paste, format, add new reference number, edit, resubmit. Yes, you get a new reference number, but it does not mean that you have to tear down the entire policy because you can use a cut and paste and a word processor.
Okay, thank you, Andrew, for those comments. Yeah, so this is the open mic. We've just been discussing on the issues that we just put up. If there are other comments, general comments, questions. Okay, so the first, I think I haven't heard any objection or any comment about the consensus, I mean, the need to explore the remote participation for consensus, to include remote participation in observing consensus. I've not read anything about that. Perhaps that means that this can be further discussed, maybe. This one is definitely clear. The co-chair aspect also is been clear, and we have not also heard anything yet about item 4 with those options that are there. So these are the things that we need to, we need the community to either propose an update of these policies and so on, and so that we can at least have some. However, I heard the board, the chair, mention that they normally approve or ratify a policy within 2 months. I mean, they meet every 2 months and ratify a policy. So maybe that will actually fix the problem. Who knows? But if there are no other comments, Douglas, do you mean to? Are you trying to make a comment, Douglas? Do you intend to make a comment?
Yes.
Because I saw you changed your seat, so I wanted to be sure.
Yes,
please.
I wanted to discuss something else.
Oh, good, good. Okay, Douglas is, okay, so I'm bringing this particular discussion to a halt while I call on Douglas to present, to talk about the global policy issue. Douglas, I hope you can do it in less than 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. I'm one of the members on the ASO Council, and there's recently been discussion about an issue around how we are currently managing ASN numbers. Perhaps to provide some context and some history, in September of 2010, ICANN board approved a policy on the allocation of ASN numbers. What's important in this policy is the 2 phases. One that predates 31st December 2010, in which IANA would give the RIRs differentiated ASNs, that means the 16-bit and the 32-bit separately. And then after that point, in which the IANA would give, would allocate or assign to the RIRs from an undifferentiated pool. So basically what has happened after this point in time, or just to give you some context, right now there is something slightly less than 500 2-byte ASN numbers in the IANA free pool, in the IANA pool. And also when you couple this with the requirement that RIRs must exhaust 80% of their assignments or allocations, there are certain questions that are coming up, that are raising up at the IANA level that I thought as a community would like to talk about very briefly. And the reason is simple. The allocation assignment policies that come from the IANA to the regional registries trickle down to us below the regional registries and affect us. So it's in our interest to actually understand them and to debate them. So just to direct what we would like to achieve with this is to understand if, one, it's in the best use of the internet and its use if we give out 2-byte ASNs by default. We know they are in short supply, but then again, we've decided to put it in a pool together with the 4-byte ASNs. So the question is this the wisest way to go about giving out these resources? The second question is, should we force people who have allocations of ASNs to run through both of their ASNs? So Afrinic, should it go ahead and just burn through 2-byte ASNs so that it can meet the 80% requirement, so that it can get allocation, fresh allocations. Because if it doesn't meet this, then IANA would never give Afrinic more ASNs. Probably the last question, which also we need to debate is, what should we do about this situation? We have these very little ASN space held at IANA. Should we try and just divide what's available between all of the RIRs and just know there's no more 2-byte ASNs, everyone's supposed to go 4-byte from now on? Or should we try and conserve and leave something for posterity? So all of this discussion is supposed to inform a larger audience and a more global setup. So I don't know how the chair wishes to go about this, but my objective was to actually raise some discussion about the matter.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. Just two things. Is it possible that you kindly summarize these questions or comments and post it on the mailing list so that we can have an idea of what it's all about? And is there a timeline to this discussion? That is there a timeline that you want all this feedback to come in? It's definitely certain that we may not be able to explore all those issues right here because we are actually beyond schedule. So can those two things be possible, Douglas? Oh, okay, thank you very much. So what's any timeline, or you will send that later? Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Louis, you want to make a comment, right? Is it in response to Douglas?
Not to Douglas, I have my own comment.
Okay, so please, I see 3 people on the line. Please take the next 10 seconds. Permit me to stop you if you don't stick to the time, please. We are late already. Thank you. Please go ahead.
The first comment I want to make regarding the amount of people participating in the room to passing a policy or reaching a consensus. As a simple count here, we have 31 people here, excluding the observers from other IRs and the Afrinic staff. And 31 people decided for the whole continent doesn't sound very right to me, and more than half the room is actually empty. So I think we should have a mechanism or way to gather more people into the room and make it a more active community. And secondly, I would make a comment on the nomination process, which I think I would like to draw a graph to help to fix the broken part, because guessing is not the right thing.
Thank you very much, Louis. Thank you very much for the useful comments. I'm sure we can also follow up on those comments online on the mailing list. Alan?
Yeah, hi, Sion. Will you permit me to speak about 4-byte ASNs, or did you want to close that topic? I was not.
Yeah, please go ahead, but please be brief on it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to be very clear here that I'm speaking in my personal capacity, not representing anybody. I do happen to be a member of the ASOAC, but that's not the hat I'm wearing here. So purely in my personal capacity, I want to say that the policy that was passed 4 years ago was very clear. We're no longer going to differentiate between 2-byte and 4-byte ASNs. They're just numbers, and we're going to use them as if they're from a single undifferentiated pool. So if there's any kind of reason to go back on that, then I'd like to see somebody raise some new policy proposals. But in the absence of that, I think we should continue to do what the policy says and treat it as an undifferentiated pool. So any number, big numbers, small numbers, doesn't matter, they're just numbers.
Thank you very much, Alan. Yeah. Owen, please.
Owen DeLong, Internet Citizen. Just to echo what Alan said and to augment it a little bit, that wasn't just a policy passed in the Afrinic region, that was a global policy that was passed in every region and then ratified by the ASO and passed on and ratified by the ICANN board. So unless we have some strong reason to change the global policy that we feel we can get through all 5 RIRs somehow before we run out of 16-bit AS numbers, which I don't see being feasible, then we should just recognize that AS numbers are now 32 bits. All AS numbers are 32 bits, even if the first 16 bits are 0, and move on.
Thank you very much for that final comment. And at this junction, I would like to thank everyone for taking their time to come to the floor to make their comments known, and for all the different issues that we've raised. I do hope that we'll be able to go back to the mailing list and continue this discussion, because that is how we can also be sure that we'll get more people engaged without the face-to-face. Thank you very much for participating in this meeting, and I look forward to meeting you at the next face-to-face. And also at the same time, I'm formally also welcoming Adam as the chair. Adam, would you like to come, please? Okay, so Adam so that picture is going to change soon, right? So the picture on that website is going to change soon, and it's good to have Adam here. So we look forward to working with Adam, and I'm sure the future. I see someone in front of the mic. Yes. I think the floor was closed.
Was it?
Actually, yes.
Oh, I missed that. But if you could just open it a little bit, because it's really important.
Do we need to ask the community? Do we need to observe consensus on that? Anyway, if you can be brief, you can make the comments.
Right. Okay. It's actually because in the last week, I've been hearing quite a bit about large amounts of IP resources being given out, /12s, you know, and I'm from the Research Education Networks. As much as, you know, we sort of oppose the earlier policy, we do need these resources. So I don't understand how that happened. I was wondering if we could get a report to the community on how you sort of give out large resources.
Okay, Omo, that's a very good question and observation. Yes, it did come up on the mailing list, and we reported it earlier in the morning to the meeting here. And if you would like us to report particularly on one request, because we do give out a few large requests, it's just that that particular one, it wasn't actually even pointed out. One person mentioned on the mailing list that there was a big request which he thinks was used outside of the region, and wondered how that happened. So we can't, since that no particular set of numbers was identified. If you want us to report on large requests, I do believe that this is something you can formally request us to do, and we can put this on our statistics. But again, I wonder what sort of information you would want, because the information we exchange with our members when they're requesting these, these addresses is actually confidential. So you'd have to be a bit particular on what piece of information you want Afrinic to publish on these large requests.
Maybe
where they're from and where.
Andrew, please don't come to the floor. Please. This was just grace for one comment. Please, let's not turn this to another series of comments. The summary is that, okay, IP addresses were allocated based on the policies that were on ground. If we don't like the policy, if we think that something is wrong about that, then please let's go back to the policy and fix it, or go back to the mailing list, make the comment, and let's continue this discussion on the mailing list, please.
I will, but can I just understand what Ernest was trying to say, because I don't. You're saying that, I understand that, there is a slow start from the presentation earlier. So, so how is it possible that, we can get a /12 and nobody knows?
Yeah, the policy has a provision for slow start, where, yes, as AFRINIC, we do issue a smaller prefix to especially a new applicant and watch their usage as they, after they've taken their address space. And we do tell them that, look, if you come back to us later, even if it's after 2 weeks, even if it's a month or a few months, and explain to us how you use this, and we're happy, then we'll give you a large allocation. Yeah, so again, I'm not really at liberty to comment about a particular request because none has been pointed out. But if you do feel that we should be sharing information about large requests, basic information, as long as it's not confidential information, then you're free, I think, to raise this issue on the RPD mailing list, where there's a wider, the wider part of the community can look at it and give feedback and guide us. And I mean, even the legal advisors are on there onto what piece of information we can share in a particular request, because we are bound by non-confidentiality clauses not to disclose the information we exchange with our members. And I think that applies to many companies, everywhere. But again, you can be assured that, yes, large requests, I can tell you that most large requests do go through thorough scrutiny, which is one of the complaints or issues raised on the list. And requests of that nature actually go to senior management, including the CEO, for eventual approval. And they study it thoroughly to make sure that it was compliant with the policies. So if you want us to share this information, be specific, go to the list. I think the list will be now that we are running out of time, you can post this on the list and see what, what feedback you get from the rest of the wider community.
I don't want to keep you from dinner, but what I'm asking for is not a particular request.
Yes.
I'm asking for all large requests so that we know that this is, that we don't have a problem with the process.
Yes.
Okay, so you're saying...
I'm asking for AFRINIC to sort of report to the community and sort of give us an understanding of how these large requests sort of get past you.
Okay, well, okay, like I said, yes, we've had you out, but if the rest of the community agrees that, yes, this is information we could share, we also need to know what sort of information should we share on those large requests. You see, yes, you've requested we share that information, but what sort of information? You see, it has to be looked at it from a wider perspective, because you might be requesting for information that we're not supposed to share. You see,
simply who's got these large resources? Where so what we should be able to get from WIS data backed up with some additional information from the staff. Nothing confidential, or that should be confidential.
Okay, what I suggest, Omo, I think it's a good idea, but why don't you run it by the RPD list and see what the rest of the community says about it? While I'm not for or against your request, I personally think that it's better to run it by the mailing list, so that it can have wider input. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just one very brief thing, and I'd like at some point for AFRINIC's legal counsel to comment on this. There was a mail on the list about large allocations, one of which has been under investigation. AFRINIC had deemed, according to the mail on the mailing list, that the application was fraudulent. Now, there were things in there about confidentiality, and I agree with that, but where I would like a ruling is the confidentiality clause is found in the Member Services Agreement. The Member Services Agreement is very clear that if you violate their conditions of application, the Member Services Agreement is null and void. At that point, the confidentiality clause should become null and void as part of the Member Services Agreement, and therefore nobody can hide behind a cloak of confidentiality anymore.
Great. Thank you, Andrew, for being short. Okay. Again, thank you for this. Thank you for participating in this discussion. And I look forward to meeting you on the mailing list again and also at the next public policy meeting. Thank you very much. Bye.